The COVID crisis has a far-reaching impact, in my view, with additional challenges for international peace and security as well on top of. And at this point in time, it is probably too early to tell how exactly this will affect international power structures and specifically also power interests or also the world order in the longer term. So what we definitely know today is that the crisis is leading to severe economic consequences, including high levels of unemployment, and it definitely puts democracy under pressure.
In hindsight, although world politics has always been exciting over the last 30 years, we lived in a rather carefree environment because we felt that everything was under control and everything was moving in our direction. European Union, our neighborhood, strove for being member or being as close as possible. And on the world stage, we felt that liberal Western democracy had won the day. And even more than that, everything was moving in our direction, as I said. So, and this has been changing over the last 10 years, I'd say. International law has been violated by big players with impunity, largely with impunity. I don't have to quote the single instances, but we are challenged by infringements of international law, and the challenges to multilateralism that you mentioned are there. So, I'm afraid many of these developments are only gaining speed. The trust in rulings of international law and that those will protect your interests as a nation state has evaporated to a certain extent. So nations try to secure their interests in different ways. That has been changing. More than half of the people don't understand what multilateralism is at all, and very many people have difficulties pronouncing it, as I'm proving right now. So it's about international cooperation on a long-term and committed, binding, responsible way. And that means that you do not only establish memberships and rules, but that you obey to these rules, even if it is against your short-term interests. And that's a long shot for a nation state. So this challenge has been around for all those 70, 80 years that we have established this multilateral system. And the very concept of an effective multilateralism that came into being 20 or 30 years ago already shows a certain discontent with the production of results. If you say you want to have it effective, you're not happy with only having multilateral institutions, but you want to see results. And that's always difficult. The broader the group is that you try to incorporate to make meaningful moves ahead. The European Union is probably the most refined and advanced multilateral organization, and it shows it's always difficult if you want to make meaningful progress in any one direction to bring everybody on board.
I think by cooperating and tackling COVID-19, I think we can not only end the pandemic hopefully faster when we cooperate, but also when we can rebuild trust. And I think trust is of utmost importance right now. People need to have hope in the system, need to have hope in their states, but also we need to really increase resilience with a view to future crises also, what comes next.
When we discussed why the support for the European Union might be going down in our populations, the politicians resorted to the question saying, we made so much progress, there's so much in for people, they can travel freely, they don't need passports, there's no borders, they don't need to change money and all that stuff. Why aren't they more grateful for it? And now with this crisis, we suddenly see what an achievement that was. Because, I mean, many people grew up, younger generations grew up not having to show their passports inside, and suddenly the experience was back, something that was like in the old days, in the 60s or in the 50s, that you couldn't even cross if you didn't have a special permit. That was a look into the abyss. And I think no nation state took these decisions lightly, although it was something that was in its toolbox and might be something to show off to your population that you do something. At the same time, you experience how seriously you're challenging the very foundations of the whole system that we're resting on. And that's no longer only the nation state, but it's also the European Union. And you don't want to endanger that. What is peculiar about the corona virus it's not a foreign actor. The threat is hard to personify even if you call the virus as if it was coming from Wuhan.
Yeah, the Wuhan virus.
Just the temptation is there to make it an actor, but it's not an actor. That's one thing. And second is, I think in none of our societies has there been a discussion about if government was culpable of what happened. It just came everywhere. Even in Italy, where the impact was harshest, there's not necessarily a debate that it was the Italian government that didn't do the right thing. It was a natural catastrophe that came over us. And that is something completely different from the crises and the crisis responses that we expected we might confront in our lifetime. That's something totally new and a loss of control. In a way, as it is disquieting, it doesn't necessarily mean that somebody is holding the government responsible for the crisis to arise. And that's a big difference.
And really that digital revolution in the last 6 or 7 years has completely changed the way that politicians and all kinds of policymakers think about how to engage with people, and maybe the way in which when people express their views as well, through social media. And the rise of a lot of right-wing populist movements has been fueled by, and extremist movements as well, has been fueled by social media, as well as positive opportunities for engagement. In Liechtenstein, how does the government engage with citizens on a daily basis? I mean, how engaged are the population? Is there a strong kind of social media community? How does the government?
There is throughout. Of course, the government is built by consensus. We make decisions by consensus, the 5 of us, and we are very close to the citizens. So we've always been in touch with them. We've always discussed with them through social media, through the video conferencing systems that arose, but not only, also through possibilities by speaking to them just on the street, because this country is really small, that we are close together, and that helped also. I think we always heard the feedback from the citizens pretty quickly and could react to it. And I think that helped also to really make the right decisions over the last couple of months that were intense for all of us, because we really we've really been closely cooperating with our neighbors. That was important for us. But we also support calls of regional approaches as a whole. I mean, for us, the current crisis has been used for us to also explore regional solutions to border issues in order to really mitigate negative effects on the economy as well as on social and family life. And so we've really been in close touch with them also to get feedback. And I think feedback also in times of crisis is the utmost. It's important to listen and to discuss, not only to make decisions without keeping the voice of the citizens.
Feedback is seductive in a way. That's one of my issues with social media, because there is a lot of feedback, and you tend to take this as the feedback of the people. But not everybody is on social media, and every transformation leaves substantial groups of the population behind. All those, I mean, I get letters from ordinary people in Austria who are not on social media, who don't even use computers, and write letters and read newspapers. Yes. So this is their way of response, which is very slow, not very emotional, but rather deliberate when you sit down and write a letter. But these people exist, and we shouldn't be seduced by the availability of social media feedback, thinking that this is the feedback of the people. Because it's like having 50,000 followers is nice, but it's 50,000. It's one thing if we manage our transformation in Europe well, and the other thing is what transformations on the global stage in our immediate neighborhood, but also on the world stage, are going to affect us. Today, the High Representative of Europe's foreign policy, Mr. Borrell, wrote a piece, an op-ed, saying that Europe has to become a geopolitical actor because all the others do, and they care less and less for norms and rules, and infringements are multiplying. And with respect to our eastern neighbors and southeastern neighbors, Turkey and Russia, we feel the heat immensely across the Mediterranean. also on our eastern borders. And so whatever transformation we do inside the European Union to become more effective and keep our legitimacy also has to address this big challenge. We're all in a situation where we see that the institutions and the power balances that made sure that we were in a rather comfortable situation are going downhill, and I think the American election is very important for that, but it's not the only one. On a global stage, we are rich and healthy. We are really well off. We are the envy of the world. We live in diversity and huge welfare, social security, and so on. But it could be better. It could always be better, and it's gone a bit down before. Question is, how important is what to you? What are your priorities? Is the only thing that you have a job, that you're healthy? Is that also your way of life? That's the mask thing that people are debating about. What is more important to me? Rather run the risk of sickness or wear a mask and feel to do something that I don't want to do? And you can have that on a global stage as well. Are you just happy with free travel and not changing money? Is that what Europe is about? Or is it about a way of life, a way that states interact with each other, about rule of law, about diversity, freedom of speech, same rights? And is that something that we need to protect in a world where these rules and laws are less and less respected, and the values and principles that lay behind that are being called into question? And what, essentially, are we willing to invest in order to do that? Are we willing to invest more money, more military, more force in order to protect these interests? Or do we just think they are certain anyway, like good weather, climate, or whatever? Or do we really have to fight for that? And that maybe is the great transformational change that we're facing, and COVID is maybe adding a few impulses and disorienting in a way, and we're not sure how that will play out. But essentially, it's a question that our societies have to answer. What is very important? What is less important? Where do we put money, muscle, and power behind?
I think it's it's of utmost importance to really learn out of this crisis, to really go back and look at what happened and how did we react and what could we have done better. And to really take all those learnings into, should the next crisis arise, whatever. The next crisis could be a cyber crisis the world wouldn't be prepared of as well. Like, we haven't been prepared for this one at all, but there are lots of other things, shutdown of the World Wide Web. There's a lot that could happen, and we should really take this as a learning process. And really, we should really reflect, and we shouldn't forget what happened. That's often the case. Humanity often forgets quickly, and we shouldn't in this moment, because we've been writing history anew. Although history is repeating itself, we've seen a similar crisis 100 years ago, Spanish flu, and of course the digital transformation that happened since has been a big asset. But we've done lots of similar mistakes again, the way we've done it 100 years ago, and I think we should really start to learn, take this as a learning process, and get stronger should the next crisis arise. And for me, what I learned specifically is to really cooperate, to not shut down, to really stay open. We could have cooperated even better with all the apps that rose out of this pandemic. The COVID apps that arose. If we had cooperated a bit better, we probably would have been faster. We've done it, and then once you traveled, you were in Germany or in Austria, the app didn't work any longer. That we should be better in these parts. But there's a lot we can take from this crisis. It's a lot we can learn from it, and I really hope governments look back in this regard, and that they take it as a learning process.